Hi, JJ here from The Shutter Goes Click. The other day I put out a video that was supposed to be about a digicam, but I found out the experience of shooting it really made me think about how differently I behaved with my film cameras in the past. The thing about it is I'm downsizing my collection, and I thought I'd take the time to share the cameras that I still have. The camera that got it all started on a collecting front. And you're a collector when you buy a camera that you don't need and that you don't particularly have to shoot with. I think that's the beginning of being a gearhead when it comes to photography. In my case, that purchase was this rangefinder, the Yashica J with a 4.5 centimeter lens and f2.8 Yashica. The great thing about it, first of all, is the wonderful lens. The Yashica lenses are just terrific, and I would say that it's just as enjoyable or as interesting as using a Tessar. The other thing that's quite remarkable, of course, is the shutter is in the lens, not in the body. And so you get this really beautiful, quiet, I think relatively quiet. I mean, I've never used a Leica myself, so, you know, that super duper amazing quiet is not something I've experienced often, but this camera is terrific. I think like it just has that great, and it looks beautiful. A lot of people prefer all black cameras, but I think this is one of the nicest chrome and black combos. A great lens, really great handling camera, very simple. It doesn't have a lot of shutter speeds on it, and I've never felt the need to use them any higher than the ones I have. So I'm very comfortable. It does have bulb. If you turn it all the way there, it does have bulb, but I think it's fine. I mean, it's better than fine. It's actually a really enjoyable focal length, and it's a great feeling. It's a very solid camera. It's the Yashica J Rangefinder. So if you ever see, I hardly ever see them, but if you ever see a Yashica J, go for it. The reason why it was ridiculous to even ever buy the Yashica J is I already had this camera, the Konica Autoreflex T3. This is my father's camera. He gave it to me. It originally came with a 50mm f1.7. Terrific lens as well. So I have a whole bunch of Konicas. Not all of them are in the best of shape. I actually have a black T3, really dented, and actually it's one of my favorite cameras to use because it just has that certain brassy vibe to it. But I really enjoy this camera as well. I have a lot of sentimental value, and this is my camera. This is the camera I had, my film camera, so I really didn't need to get that Yashica J. But once I bought that Yashica J, boy, that sent me down the river, if you know what I mean. Why does it have the 40 f1.8? The 40 length, I like shorter lenses. The 40, this is just, to me, it's a lucky lens. I can't, tell you on the optical level why it's terrific. It just feels, the shapes feel round to me. Skin tones seem really creamy. It just feels like a natural camera to me. I'll admit something. I actually traded a Nikon FM2N for this lens and a body. The body was terrible in the end. I found some fungus in it, but and I don't know what I was thinking. I just valued this lens more, and I just didn't need the FM2N. And clearly, that person made away with my FM2N like a rocket. He just got it, gave me the 40, and ran away. I'm quite sure he got this lens for cheap, but to me, it was hard to find back then, and I don't know. I was comfortable, picking up and letting go of cameras, so it wasn't a big deal for me. So this is my baby, the Konica Autoreflex T3. I think you might want to hear the shutter on this one too. So you can see how much heavier and louder it is, but it shoots with authority. Let's just put it that way. That's quite the thud. One of the things I should mention is that this camera uses the 1.35 volt mercury battery, and it's obviously easier to get the 1.5. So what I've done is I usually shoot at 100 because the higher voltage of this more modern battery makes the diode, the light sensor, too sensitive, and so it thinks there's more light than there actually is. So by dialing it down, you have it responding better. It's usually one stop difference. So if you're shooting 400, you could set the camera at 200 ASA and it's perfectly fine. I prefer overexposure anyways, even black and white or color, but I use like really vanilla film like Superia or Extra Fuji. If that's the case, I might even shoot it at a 100. The other thing that I do, and I've done a lot, is I shoot with a flash at all times with this camera. I become independent of the environmental light. So I'm actually setting the flash and the camera so they sync on ISO at a shutter speed that allows the flash to work, and I merely set the flash to match the ISO of the film and the f-stop, and that's the only thing you have to do. So that's one way to work around the battery issue, but also I think just going 2 stops down or a stop down with a 1.5 volt battery is a perfect way to go, and I find it entirely usable for the last 20 years. So I don't think that's a problem. That's a Konica Autoreflex T3. Of course, I showed this in my last video. This is the Nikon One Touch, or the L35AF2. This is another camera that I nearly always use flash on. I tend to use Ilford, the black and white film, the C40 black and white film, I can't even remember the name of it, with the flash on. Funny trick though, in a highlight situation, right, you can't get when it's a lot of light, you can't get the flash to pop and charge. So what I've always done is take the camera and sort of cover up the diode, and that will make the flash pop out. I'll see if I can show it to you properly. So I'm covering up the diode so it thinks it's dark, and now it's charging even though I've got this light bashing down into it. So this allows me to use it even though under bright conditions with a flash on, even at the beach. I've found in the past I've actually had to shove this camera in a dark canvas bag to be able to get the shutter to come up because it's so bright on the beach. But once you do, you get this really cool use of the flash fill in a bright circumstance, and I've felt taking photos that really make me happy. I'm really proud of on the beach. The other funny thing about this one is that this One Touch has a notorious problem that I mentioned on the Flickr site that I used to help moderate. This door is not a Nikon L35AF2 door. This is not a One Touch door. This is actually the door from a L35AF, the original. It's metal. And the reason why is that a lot of One Touches, the #2 version of this camera, would have a bowing door, and there would always be fear of light leaks along its edge. So by swapping this door, I got a nice solid rigid door. It actually offers an incredible amount of rigidity for the body by just adding this sort of metal shank, you could say, to the whole camera. And so it just provides it's kind of a rigid element to the whole thing that just makes the whole camera feel incredibly solid. And that's a mod. If you ever come across a One Touch that has that awful door, highly recommend you finding a really busted up Nikon L35AF and swapping them out. You just take the pins out here. Now this door does, the pins width you can see are a bit thinner, right? Not as wide. The post is exposed, so this door does, when you open it, does rattle back and forth, but it has no effect once you close it because it lines up into the channel and it becomes light tight. So I highly recommend that mod. Actually, it's something I don't think I've ever really blogged about or talked about on the Shutter Goes click.blogspot.com, but that's a really great pointer. And finally, I've imparted actually some information that may be of interest to you, how to a great mod, putting a L35AF from a broken one, don't ruin a good one, on your One Touch if the door is bowed. So that's one way to recover it. I tried to iron the plastic door and flatten it and it didn't work. So this is a much better solution. I think that's 3 cameras. So I think you've had enough. And I've had my say for today. I hope I actually provided some useful content for all you camera collectors and shooters out there. And have a great day taking photographs.